Welcome to the Introspective Collective podcast. Thank you for tuning in once again. So, today our topic is strong woman versus superwoman.
Okay, so I guess I'll start. When we were debating how to title and discuss this topic, we want to talk about strong woman versus superwoman. And there is a distinct distinction. Now, when I think about a strong woman, you know, I think about what do we really mean by a strong woman? And I know I think about my grandmother a lot, strong woman. She and her husband migrated from the south to the north during the fifth wave of the Great Migration, leaving four children in the south with her mother while they came and made a new life. And I could go on and on about my grandmother, who I have so much respect for, but she and my mom, they were strong women. So when I think about strong women, I think of strong women regardless of race, culture, creed, social, economic status. We're thinking of a woman who, stands firm footed and knows this is my task, this is what I must accomplish, this is my role to be the matriarch of the family. And anyone could fill in their definitions. This is not exclusive. But I also think about, when we think about today's woman, we think of an independent woman who's handling her business. We also have other examples of strong women. Of course, we could look at Michelle Obama being a strong woman. We could go on and on. There are examples everywhere. So there is no stigma to being a strong woman, except when I also think about sometimes that strong woman is superwoman or becomes superwoman, which I think where that can become problematic because, we have words in our culture, Superman is also, one of the, I think, DC comics, or is he Marvel? I keep forgetting which one.
Right.
Right. We know that superheroes, in the Marvel universe are those people we see on TV. But if we really go back to the origins of the DC and the Marvel comics, they were created during, I think, sometime around World War II, where people needed something to look up to. And that's where the idea of the Marvel DC comics. And, there were, we see depictions of people doing human things because society needed a uplift, But then when I think about, even in my own life, when we think about a strong woman, we think of someone who holds it down, right?
Yes.
Okay. But then when does the strong woman need to know the limits? Where do strong women go when they're tired? Right? And then when we get this superwoman syndrome, either by default or necessity, and I want to be clear about that. Okay.
Yep.
Either by default or necessity, sometimes we as women, and this supersedes, this is intersectional of all women, where we have to then take on the mantle and, again, either by default or by necessity, we have to do and keep on doing.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't know when to pull back as
True.
strong women. I before I throw this out to my colleagues, I think sometimes about, when I lost my husband and one of my coworkers, said to me, I don't know what to say to you. You are such a strong woman. But where do you go when you need someone's shoulder to lean on? And I never forgot when that coworker said that to me, former coworker, because he made me think, like, right. And that made me look inward and think about things. So I'm going to say that. And then I'm also going to say, as strong women, sometimes where we kind of lose perspective, sometimes strong women don't know when to stop fighting.
Yeah.
And I think about that, of course I like to reference movies, but Why Did I Get Married? And when Jill Scott's character was in the hotel room and she was upset about what all had transpired. And, Troy said to her, just signing the paper sometimes is all the strength you need, and before I kind of throw the baton over, I think about sometimes as strong women, sometimes we don't know the limits because we feel if I just love hard enough, if I just show them that I'm their cheerleader long enough, if I just, fight harder to show, to do. And that's where sometimes we are not really seeing how that weight isn't healthy for us. So I'm going to stop there. Whoever wants to jump in, I'm listening.
Well, I'll say if Preston, if you don't mind, if I jump in.
Go right ahead.
Some of the indicators, picking up from where Paula left off, is the indicators of what we say the superwoman syndrome, where we're veering off into trying to accomplish the impossible. Is a lot of times what happens. You're feeling stressed, you're feeling anxious, you're overwhelmed and all of those things, but yet we're trying to live up to this impossible expectation. And then we have to say, and where did this expectation come from? Right? Like you referenced, Paula, we watched the strong women in our lives, or we've been kind of conditioned, right? That, okay, this is what you have to do. You're going to have to take care of yourself. You're going to have to be independent and self-reliant, and anything short of that, we may perceive ourselves as failing. And with working with women, a lot of times this is what bubbles up. And then we have to examine, like, okay, but who set this expectation? And giving ourselves permission to say, you know what, I'm grateful that my grandmother and my aunts and my mom or whomever may have been strong and really tried to do the impossible. But when we look at them, oftentimes, are they really happy? Where do we think that anger and irritability comes in from, right? I think of my mom. She's a strong woman. And, I doubt if she'll be listening, but but she was mean. And why? Because she was angry, because it's overrated. So now, even for myself, learning to give myself, and when I'm working with women, we have to allow ourselves grace, and we have to give ourselves permission. And it is okay to say, I do not want to subscribe to that, or I'm no longer going to subscribe to that because it is impossible, it is unrealistic. So how do I modify things? It doesn't mean that you're any less of a strong woman, but now you are individualizing by modifying what works and what does not work for you.
And Des, what we're talking about is understanding and establishing boundaries.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, I always remember, we have, let's just face it, I'm bringing this in for, our BIPOC women, especially Black women. We're always identified as the angry Black woman. And I used to always ask, well, why is she angry? Just going back to what you just said, Des, we're depicted as angry, but yet we have and it's a fact, Black women represent the segment of the population with the highest advanced degrees. So, okay, for whatever reasons that we choose to seek out those advanced degrees, but yet we don't hear that moniker touted as much as we hear the angry Black women. So I'm gonna just stop because I know Preston want to jump in, but I'll just stop right there.
Well,
Yes, we would love to hear the male's perspective on this, Preston.
yeah, and I'm just sitting here. You all have said so much, added so much to the conversation, and I'm going back. Paula, you tapped into history, and I'm thinking back. If you go, pre-slavery, there were women. The movie is escaping me right now, but there were women who led societies. They were the warriors,
of
right?
course. Well,
Right.
Woman King, like we see a depiction right there, a true story.
Exactly. And then you fast forward, let's just say to slavery, right? And women had to be strong and they had to be superheroes at that time as well, right? And it's not necessarily it's unfortunate they had to be, but during those times and those conditions, they did whatever they had to do for the family, right? Even if it meant sleeping with the slave master, okay, for the family, right? Because the husband, he's upset, he's ready to fight, but she don't want him to do anything because he might get killed or kill all of us. So she did what she had to do, right?
Well, she didn't have a choice back then, right?
She didn't have a choice.
We're saying clearly, like,
yeah, she didn't have agency at that point in time.
Right. Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson.
But they endured and they did, right? And then, Paula, you mentioned World War II. And then I was thinking, well, at that time when most of the men were away at war,
there you go.
The women had to pick up the slack and do what they had to do to take care of families and make sure everything on the home front was straight. I remember hearing stories from my grandmother while my grandfather was away. She actually brought in my aunt, and there was 2 kids at that time, and my grandmother worked during the night and my aunt worked during the day, so there would always be somebody home to watch the kids, right?
Okay.
So so you take that period and then you move forward from there, and then I think about how economics has played a part in the demand on women as well. And the BIPOC and Black communities, Black women have always worked, right? But as you move forward through time and education, then I think about the question. I think about the question of, can a woman have it all, right? Can she be educated? Can she have a career? Can she be married? Can she have a family? Can she take care of a house, right? So then it also makes me think about, well, she can have it all, but is this a woman who has a partner? Is this a woman who doesn't have a partner? Is this a woman who can make choices, or is this a woman who has to just step into the circumstances that she was left with and make the best that she has to make it, right? But when I think about now, and I think about my mom too, sometimes, the choice of their partner might be one to, either bail out or not be present or not be fully engaged. And then somebody has to step up. And so we know historically women have stepped up and they've done what was necessary. So absolutely having the characteristic of being strong and, being plugged into what's needed and being the backbone of the Black home and beyond. I think that is a positive characteristic to have, to be able to step up. Right. But I don't think it's necessarily fair, or it should be the plan, or it should be that way, that she should have to operate in this superhero, going above and beyond, like as a regular thing. There's times in life where we have to step up and go beyond, but should you have to live a life of the superwoman above and beyond? And that's what I think is unrealistic and unhealthy, where the expectation and the demand is greater than what's realistic or healthy for you to do. And again, there's a lot of different circumstances that plays into. It could be a husband and wife, and he all of a sudden dies, right? And she's left with 2-3 kids, right? And she has to step up, right? But there's circumstances where there's 2 mates, but one mate, he's not stepping up, or one mate, maybe he's got an addiction, or one mate, he's not plugged into the family. And she says, you know what? I got these kids. I've got to step up. I got to go above and beyond, you know? So she gets up, she goes to work, she works her 8-10 hours. Then she comes home, she cleans house, she cooks, and she takes care of everybody in the house. Right. And that's the point at which being strong is a good characteristic, to be able to step up and handle things, but to have to go above and beyond and be this superhero like your everyday life, just like for now on, is unfair and it's unhealthy, it's unrealistic. So I think that, and Desiree, you tapped into it, women have the right, because sometimes women obligate themselves, right? Because sometimes society says, hey, this is what you should do. Sometimes the circumstances dictate, hey, this is what I got to do. And then sometimes women do wear the mantle. And if it means going above and beyond and being a superhero, then they're going to try to do it. Right.
Mhm.
But I think that's unfair. It's unrealistic. It's unhealthy. And Desiree, you said it. You said sometimes you have to give yourself grace and give yourself permission
Right.
to realize that you need to love yourself. And through that loving yourself, you know, you can have that self-care and set some healthy boundaries for yourself and for those that are your family or close ones that, you know, you're turning into this superhero for, you know. So I think that, you know, I think that's kind of the point, you know, when you sum it up, is that you shouldn't necessarily have to operate in a superwoman syndrome. But the circumstances are the circumstances. But even within that, you have to give yourself grace and permission to set healthy boundaries for yourself. And that's what I see.
And, and if I can pick up from there, it's for us to learn, how to effectively communicate that with those people, whether it's our family or even, setting professional boundaries or whatever that is, because unfortunately, because we have set the tone, now it's the expectation, and the people around us expect us to keep living up to this. And they may see that we're stressed, but it's like, some people may be in tune and say, hey, what can I do to take some of the load off? But then others, because you've always done it, and like believe Paula said in the beginning, or maybe it was a previous conversation, it's like, where does the strong woman go? To when does she put her burdens down, or give herself the grace and the permission to say, I don't want to do this anymore, and communicate it. And now part of that healthy boundary is like, hey, I need some assistance. So teamwork makes the dream work. And I always explain to people, family, we're a team, and everybody needs to play their position. And if someone is slacking or whatever's going on, we're going to have to redefine some of the roles here, so that it's more of an equal balance, so that women can feel comfortable. Because I get it too. They may want to give themselves permission to stop being superwoman, but then they recognize, but if they don't do what they're doing, because no one else is going to pick up the slack, it's all going to fall apart. So I think it's just an opportunity for self-awareness, self-reflection, self-evaluation, and now deciding what are the things that need to be now implemented. Healthy boundaries, communication, give yourself grace, and really kind of letting go of something that no longer serves you, or truly is not serving you.
Well,
And just sorry, Preston, I wanted to jump in real
please do.
quick.
Please do.
So, one thing that when I work with individuals and families, I always talk about, as we're saying here, boundaries, grace. But I also ask women, if you had a best friend, and I ask men too, but we're talking about women here. If you had a best friend and your best friend came to you and, needed support and shared what was on her heart, what she was going through, how would you respond to that best friend? And as we're all sitting here thinking of that image, I usually then say, well, be your own best friend.
Hmm.
Show grace, kindness, tenderness. If you could do that for your best friend, you should be in the habit of treating yourself with that same tenderness and grace. So, as women, we all are, as humans, period. But, we talking about super women. I mean, strong women versus super women. We need to think about self-care, and sometimes drawing a boundary, setting limits with others is a form of self-care.
Very true.
And as we close out, let me just say from the men's side of the table, fellas, we need to step up and, take a look at the ladies that are in your life. And, maybe we need to be a little bit more aware and be a little bit more encouraging, to them so that, some of that burden can be eased and they can feel at ease to give themselves grace and permission and self-care, So, fellas, we need to be more aware. So as we close out this segment, we love our BIPOC and queens, and we need to make sure that they are loved. Signing off.
Okay. Well, thanks again, listeners. Please continue to tune in to our episodes and hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you.